Among others is the lack of awareness where most government entities do not prioritize the use of the digital spaces to inform citizens as a medium to respond to various issues. Now, reports from civil society organizations also indicate that the little digital information delivered in English also excludes many users. However, the ICT Ministry is in preparations for the new service, a scheme that will empower communication officers to access information at any time whenever contacted by the end users. In this digital era, online spaces, if fully utilized, can increase the access to information and democratize participation in public procurement.
Thank you, Viola.
We still have a problem in the standing orders that the communication officer cannot communicate without authority from the chief executive, who is the cow at district. And that's why we are working on the new service of cadres of communication officers, so that we raise their level from being officers to managers.
The biggest factor that is hindering access to information actually in Uganda is lack of awareness on the side of citizens as well as on the side of the duty bearers. The information holders who are government officials actually do not know their obligation, that they are supposed to proactively disclose information. They are not aware that even Ugandans, without asking for this information, they're supposed to put it out there on their notes boards, on their websites, even call press conferences.
Our inability to communicate in a language that unifies us. English is our national language, granted, but in terms of our comprehension and understanding of the language, we remain with barriers in it. And that speaks to our literacy, our competencies and things like that. And that's why we think that even when people could have used the available resources online, they can only go so far, because some of them are only literate in their native language.
Refreshments in a big boardroom.
Now, it is from that story that we are drawing our poll question tonight, and we ask that you share your experience of accessing information from a public office. Once again, share your experience of accessing information from a public office. Now, feel free to share your comments on our social media platforms, NTV Uganda on Facebook and at NTV Uganda on Twitter. We shall get to read them a bit later on. For now, we do continue. As mentioned in the story, today is the International Day for Universal Access to Information, also sometimes referred to as the Right to Know Day. The day is meant to highlight that not only when citizens know how they are governed can they hold their governments accountable. Therefore, universal access to information is a cornerstone of healthy and inclusive democratic societies. Now, in studio to shed some more light on the concept of universal access to information, especially in the Ugandan context, is Charity Komujjurizi, the Monitoring and Evaluation Coordinator at the African Freedom of Information Center. Good evening, Charity, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening, and good evening, viewers.
Charity, give us a sense of what we mean by the right to know or universal access to information in today's context.
The right to know is actually a universal human right, which means that every citizen has a right to know, has a right to access information in the hands of the public office. In Uganda particularly, actually our constitution guarantees us this right. Under Article 41 of our constitution guarantees that every citizen of Uganda has a right to access information from a public office, as long as that information, I will emphasize that as long as that information does not tamper with the security of Uganda. Meaning that every citizen of Uganda can actually ask for information about budgets, information about the different projects, information about your MPs, but you are not actually, you are restricted to ask information about, for example, my private life or information of classified budgets, for example. However, we find that much as this right is given to us, there are also restrictions. Yes, today at the presser, the minister committed that Uganda is on the road to ensure that 90% of the citizens access internet. But we see that there are still many challenges with internet shutdowns. We still have some channels shut down, like Facebook. This limits accessibility. We know that many Ugandans are more on social media than any other internet channel. So we call upon government to actually fast-track this process and ensure that some internet channels, like social media channels, are actually re-established, and also ensure that the high costs of accessing internet, the data costs, should be reduced, and taxes also reduced. We know that this is possible, and this way every citizen of Uganda will be able to enjoy their human right by accessing information about health, information about education. And we saw this, for example, during COVID. The internet helped a lot. The internet has also been used to transfer a lot of news. Personally, NTV, I access NTV on my phone using the internet. So it is very important, and given that it's a fundamental right, government should not even debate about it.
Okay. Now, Uganda's Access to Information Act has been in place for over a decade. Can you shed light on its success?
Oh, yes. It has been in place since 2005, with even regulations put in place in 2011. But a very few Ugandans are aware of this law. Our research in 2019 found that over 60% of duty bearers, these are people in public offices, are not even aware of their obligations under the Access to Information law. And it is worse for the citizens. The citizens think it is government's information. The citizens don't know that actually the government is even obliged to share this information without even asking for it. The government should be sharing information on all its platforms, and this is information about the different projects that are happening, about government business, because government is accountable to the citizens of Uganda.
So where do you think improvements might still be needed to ensure that the right to information is fully realized by all citizens? Like you said, not so many of them actually know that this law is in place.
Yes. The law provides a long list of restrictions. I think that needs to be revised. The other area that needs to be improved is that the law only gives the authority to the CEO of the government body to provide or to authorize access of that information. Yes, the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance is doing a great job by recruiting information officers, but the standing orders don't have or don't give the power of these information to these information officers to give information to the citizens. They still need authorization from the CEO, who is the head of the government entity. The costs are also still high. Recently at AFIC, I will not mention the government entity, we made a request of a certain contract, and we were requested to pay 10 million to access that document. We found it a little bit funny, and we are thinking of what to do about this.
Okay. What would be your final remarks as we close this conversation?
Yeah, my final remarks are, first of all, calling upon government to ensure that the right of access to information is enjoyed by every citizen. And as the theme of this International Day for Universal Access to Information, where we look at the importance of online space for access to information, is to ensure that online space is enjoyed as a freedom. Let Facebook be opened. Let shutdowns and internet disruptions be controlled so that every citizen of Uganda can enjoy their right to access information.
Okay, thank you so much, Charity Komujjurizi, for making time to speak to us. She is the Monitoring and Evaluation Coordinator at the African Freedom of Information Center. Now,